Welcome to Fear and Greed, the Sunday edition. It's the 14th of November 2021 and I'm Sean Aylmer. This is our Sunday show where we have a bit of a change of pace and we look at some of our favourite stories from the week. Sometimes they're just the weirdest or the quirkiest stories. As always, I'm joined by the Fear and Greed team. Adam Lang, good morning.
Good morning, Sean.
Michael Thompson, good morning.
Good morning, Sean.
Michael, audience feedback. That's where we like to start Sundays.
Yeah, we like to start on a bit of a positive note, because I'm only going to read the positive ones, aren't I?
Clearly.
This one, there's actually two that I want to share with you. One came from Apple Podcasts, and this is really nice. This listener says, great conversational podcast, one of my favourites to listen to first thing while on a morning walk, all the important business news. Special mention for the Sunday edition, love the format. So very, very nice piece of feedback. But then there's this one, and I don't quite know what to make of it, but I will ask a question first. Adam, does your wife listen to this podcast?
Not all of them, occasionally.
Okay, well, a listener who has asked to be identified as Angie, no surname, said this. I love the Sunday show, and in particular, I'm quite obsessed with Adam's voice. I'd like him to read me a bedtime story.
Happy to take requests.
A bedtime spreadsheet. God, that'd be fun.
Maybe there's a new market, bedtime spreadsheets.
No, there is not. There is not a new market for bedtime spreadsheets. I'm going to put a stop to that one right now before you get carried away with it, except for Angie.
We haven't even got a safe word yet. We need a safe word right now.
Angie.
Angie is safe word to Angie. Now, let me give you a bit of feedback. So one of my sons is first year out of high school, and one of his friends is at university and doing a commerce-style subject. And anyway, he sent my son a text message the other day, and it was actually a group chat amongst university students. And what it is, it's a picture of the Fear and Greed tile, which we use. It says, pretty solid podcast for daily stock updates, 15-minute episodes, and they do some solid interviews too. I'm not sure what solid actually means in this instance, but I think
Very
it's good.
70s, isn't it? Like, do me a solid, like a solid favour.
I don't think I've ever heard two people sound older than the two of you just then.
No, I just thought it was a nice little feedback from a bunch of 19-year-olds.
That is fantastic feedback.
Yes. Adam, did you have a good week?
Sean, I did. I had a ripper of a week. Thank you.
God, you got a lovely voice.
Oh, God.
Now, Adam.
Yes, Sean.
I want your opinion on this, right?
Okay.
We were recording during the week, and you and I would agree that Michael is a genuinely good producer. He makes such a difference to Fear and Greed, and I think any guest that's ever come on to Fear and Greed would appreciate the skills of Michael.
Yeah, we couldn't have a better producer.
But don't you think he's a bit quirky?
I do, Sean. I picked up on something. I wonder if you picked up on it too. So it was Wednesday afternoon. We'd been doing a fair bit of recording, and I just had to ask myself, are we now spending too much time in the virtual studio? Maybe, maybe not, but let's see what you think. On Wednesday afternoon, so Michael, you must have been feeling a little ponderous because you said something that was very open, but also maybe just a little bit of stream of consciousness
Weird.
Creeping in.
I bet we're thinking the same thing here.
Okay, so we'll see if we are. Michael, you mentioned that from your virtual studio window, you'd taken to noticing cats and birds visiting your backyard and watching them, staring at them.
We're going in the same direction, Adam. This is good.
Michael, you said you were staring at them and occasionally waving at them. And then in your mind, you went on to say, I'd also started to wonder why they weren't waving back. It was a moment where I had to note it down because I wanted to bring it up with you today. Do you recall the moment, Michael?
I do recall, and there was also...
You haven't quite finished the story, Adam, because he said they're not waving back. They really should be because they have wings.
And
please explain.
You know the worst part? I got about halfway through saying this to you, and just this alarm started going off in my head going, abort, abort, abort. this is going to be raised on the Sunday show. And for some reason, I just kept going. I think...
It was genius.
See, this is the problem when you take people into your confidence, they betray you on a podcast when you really have no excuse for your actions.
Now, look, I'm going to move on to Save Michael. I'm introducing a new segment unbeknownst to you two today, and it's the best, the best part of the newsletter. And so each morning we put out a newsletter, and I must say it's Adam and Michael that do most of the work when it comes to the quirky stories. And one thing I found myself this week doing, I followed the John Singleton 80th birthday video. And what I did, I found myself watching the ad, which was the I Still Call Australia Home ad for Qantas, which then took me to Peter Allen, which then took me to This Is Your Life, the old TV show about Peter Allen.
Hole?
Yep. Then got me on to Liza Minnelli. Then I ended up at Bette Midler.
Liza Minnelli.
They were married.
Sure.
Peter Allen and Liza Minnelli were married many years ago. Crazy. But this segment is about which part of the newsletter did you most enjoy this week? And I, for some reason, just really enjoyed that little trip. And, you know, once you get online, you can go all sorts of places that you didn't think you needed to go. But this week, that was the best for me, was following the John Singleton line. Now, Michael?
I have a very clear winner for me, and it was in Friday's newsletter, and it was a story because one of the segments in the newsletter is essentially the Curious Sean section where we look at things that have happened on this day. And on Friday, 51 years earlier, there had been a pretty momentous occasion that happened in the US on a beach in Oregon. A large whale had washed up, a whale carcass, and they had to get rid of it. They couldn't bury it, couldn't cut it up, so they decided to blow it up instead. And instead of using 5 kilos of TNT, as I probably should have, the engineer in charge decided to use half a ton instead. And a news crew was on hand to capture it. And it is the greatest thing I have ever seen. And it is 51 years since that whale was blown sky high.
All over onlookers and car destroying cars.
It was amazing. So look, it's a pretty vague link to business because really there wasn't one. I couldn't find really.
The car had to be repaired.
And there was also an insurance claim.
Yeah, true.
For the whale. So there was a link, but I didn't even try to make that in the newsletter. I just thought, you know what, this is too good on its own, just to acknowledge the 51st anniversary of it.
It's worth looking at. That was in Fridays. What about you, Adam? Did you have a favourite this week?
Oh, look, I did. That was definitely the one for me. But I think, Michael, another cracker of a story was the metaverse and Weta Studios. Do you remember it?
Well, actually, funny that you mentioned that, Adam, because it is one of the stories that I wanted to talk about today because we spoke a lot about some of the big deals that have happened in corporate Australia this week. This one wasn't in Australia, so we didn't mention it on the podcast, but it was a pretty big deal. New Zealand film director Peter Jackson sold one of his companies, Weta Digital. It's a business that essentially makes digital characters and worlds for movies like Avatar and Lord of the Rings, that kind of thing. And so he's selling most of the studio for $1.6 billion to a company called Unity, which makes software for video games. So it is, as you said, Adam, it is the next step in the metaverse. This company, Unity, is going to be using some of the best technology in the world to create even more realistic digital worlds, things that are realistic enough to have won Oscars for their rendition of Worlds. And so you can just see that step by step we're actually getting closer to this creation of a digital world, maybe one that we can in fact lure you into, Adam. I was a bit hesitant there to actually mention Lord of the Rings because...
Why?
I couldn't, if you asked me to, I couldn't name any of the characters that Weta Digital created because I haven't actually seen the movie. I haven't seen any of the Lord of the Rings movies.
No.
What?
It's one of those secret shames that wouldn't readily admit, but clearly I just did. It's like also admitting that you haven't seen like The Godfather or something, which I haven't seen either.
I've never seen a Harry Potter movie.
What? Oh no, that's okay. Have you read them though?
No.
Oh.
No, nothing about Harry Potter.
Oh, hang on.
We've all got homework to do, it seems.
Adam, do you have a secret shame that we can talk about?
In terms of just narrowing that down a bit, in terms of a movie I haven't seen, Avatar.
Oh, really?
No,
Should I have seen that?
No, I haven't seen that. Nah. Do you know what your secret shame is, Adam?
Oh, thank you, Sean. Go ahead.
I'm going to tell you what it is. This week, we're having a meeting, a fear and greed meeting, and Adam's running in the middle of the meeting. I mean, seriously? So you're very fit, Adam, and you run a lot. And you run 24 Ks and then you come back to do a bit of exercise.
Not all the time.
Oh, I know, but you do. And we're having this meeting and Michael said, "Are you running, Adam?" And you'd already told us you'd fallen over and grazed your knee or something rather like that. And so as you're talking to us, you say, "I'm just going up hill." Okay, I'm there now. Right. Yeah, anyway, back to the spreadsheet. And it was quite entertaining. But I think in some ways, in Adam world, Adamski world, that's kind of the secret shame that I'm doing something. You're trying to do 2 or 3 things at once, but not letting the others know that you're doing it.
Yeah, well, we've all got busy schedules, right? So my very sort of precise schedule had been thrown out of whack to my even greater shame, which I'm now broadcasting. I'd slipped on a bush run. And it had taken me some time to recover.
That had delayed you for 67 seconds.
And so I had not made it back to my computer terminal just in time for the meeting and had to do all of the notes with Michael's help and a recollection of a spreadsheet. Very second class.
Do you carry a printout of your spreadsheets just in case of a situation like that? If it's like in case of emergency, break glass and you can just check your printout.
Here's what I prepared. No, I didn't.
Adam, let's get on to something a little more serious.
Such as business.
Yeah, such as business. You were talking this week about Warren Buffett, who's arguably the greatest investor of his generation. He's 91 now. He and his sidekick, Charlie Munger, who I think is 93. During the 3 months to the end of September, his company, Berkshire Hathaway, was a net seller of equities. 4 quarters in a row. What do you make of that?
Well, that was really interesting to me. Like, he's just demonstrably shown over such a long period of time how good he is, right? And here's a fellow that does his research and really makes evaluations of companies from probably a unique perspective, but he's done it for so long and so successfully. So, we were talking last Sunday about just how much the market had changed in the last year. ASX up 20%, all these figures that had changed year on year so much. Meanwhile, in the last year, Berkshire Hathaway, 91-year-old Warren Buffett, has had a year of selling out of the share market. And I thought, okay, that's a really interesting message to pay attention to. So it's made me really think about it in a different way, investing in the present and in the near future. So I think it's really notable for what he's done.
He's certainly worth following, Warren Buffett. Over decades, he's been an incredible investor. And even though his theory is you never invest in anything that you don't understand. Now, it means he missed the technology boom in the late 90s, so he's come on board more now, I think. He's always been criticised for not really investing in technology, but wow, what a track record.
Yeah, incredible.
I met him once.
Oh, do tell.
Really?
Yeah, it was about 18 years ago. I was the Financial Review correspondent in New York, and I went out to the Berkshire Hathaway annual general meeting, which is quite an event. And he had a press conference afterwards. And from memory, again, I might get this slightly wrong, Berkshire Hathaway had an interest in an insurer called HIH. HIH
in Australia?
In Australia, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, HIH actually went under eventually, and its CEO, Ray Williams, ended up in jail. So it wasn't, a great story of an Australian insurance company. But at the time, we had the press conference and, you took a number. And so I got to ask Mr. Buffett a question, and I asked Warren Buffett about HIH, and he had a prepared answer, and that was all right. So he gave me the prepared answer, Press conference finishes, that's fine. I go to the bathroom, and they're famous, some of these annual general meetings, for going for a long time. So you need to go to the bathroom. I went to the bathroom, and I'm sort of doing what you do at the bathroom, standing there, and who comes in but Warren Buffett? And he stands next to me, and he does what he has to do. And I'm there thinking, what do I say? What do I say? I'm a journalist. I really should ask him some really tough questions, something that he can't avoid. In that moment, I was kind of scared of the guy, but thinking, I have to ask him a tough question. And I turned around to say, Mr. Buffett, tell me more about HIH. And he just turned around and he said, that was a really good question about HIH. I'm pleased I answered it. And I went, yes, thanks, Mr. Buffett. And we finished our business and we left. And I never had the courage to tell my editor. I had a golden opportunity to ask him the tough questions, but I was too scared.
And because of where you were at the time, you wouldn't have been able to shake his hand either.
No. Angie, you're back. General Electric this week, once the doyen of big conglomerates globally, and I do think it was actually the largest company in the world at one point, this week came out and said it will split into three. It's struggled for about 20 years now, really ever since Jack Welch days. He's the famous CEO of General Electric. So it came out this week, said it's going to split into three. It's the same week that Google's parent Alphabet hit the $2 trillion market capitalization. We all already know that Microsoft and Apple are worth $2.5 trillion each. I thought it was really interesting that those two things, General Electric splitting into three and the third big tech company hitting the $2 trillion mark, it really just demonstrated how the world has changed in the last 10 or 20 years and how technology has totally taken over.
I'm the same as you, Sean. I'm intrigued by it. And, there was for so many years themes of gathering up into one big whole and creating extra value that way. This is going the other way. And I'm not sure of, I understand the concept of splitting the whole into three, great, but why? And why will that be a better thing? So we've seen companies doing that in the resources sectors, perhaps taking off the fossil fuel or older style elements into one asset.
AGL Energy is a good example of that.
Yeah, precisely. So you can see the underlying theme there where some investors have an appetite for a higher threshold for environmental responsibility, others lower, and that can make sense to an investment palette. But what's driving this one? I'm not quite sure yet. I really have to look into it a bit more.
The thing that struck me as well, you mentioned Alphabet, Sean, and I've mentioned this before, is the speed at which these big tech giants are hitting these milestones now as well, because I think Alphabet only reached the $1 trillion market cap in January of last year.
Yeah.
And so for it to have then doubled again by November of 2021, it's just amazing.
Yeah, it's really remarkable. We talked about this last week, whether or not they'd topped out, and I boldly said, yep, tech companies have topped out just to see Alphabet hit $2 trillion this week.
That's right. We've kept that recording just so you know,
right.
so that we'll bust it out next year when they hit $3 trillion.
But it is actually a problem for investors because the top 5 of the top companies on Wall Street are tech companies. So if you buy Wall Street stocks, if you buy an exchange-traded fund that mimics Wall Street, you're going to end up with too many tech stocks. And if they don't have a good run, all of a sudden you lose out. If they do, obviously you do, but it's not good for diversification. So I actually think it is a real challenge for investors how, the General Electrics of the world have gone backwards and split into three, and the tech companies are just so dominating.
It is, but would you call it a good challenge, Sean?
No, diversification. I think it's a bad thing because I think diversification, for most of us that invest, we don't know enough about it to do anything but invest in ETFs or passive funds day traders obviously do, but a lot of us, that's too hard. And one of the critical things about investing is diversification. So I could go and buy, the S&P 500 and put $1,000 into an ETF that covers the S&P 500 and just be far, far too overweight tech stocks. So I think it is a problem.
So in effect, the rebalancing is the challenge. But in this case, these tech stocks have all gone up in value. So it's a nice aspect of rebalancing.
Yeah, but I made the call last week, Adamski. Don't tell me
You're
otherwise.
sticking to it. Okay.
Michael, Spikevax. What's it make you think of?
I actually don't know what to make of this, and it's because I learnt this from you this week. So I actually learned a lot of things. I've learnt a lot about inflation from you this week.
I've learned a lot about birds from you, Michael.
You are welcome. But this week I learnt about the naming of COVID vaccines. We already knew about AstraZeneca changing the name of its COVID vax to Vaxzevria. Not that anybody really calls it that. The purpose of it is to really kind of separate it from the company name that makes it, and so that there is some kind of international consistency between the names, and so that it is recognisable as one of the COVID vaccinations. But in AstraZeneca's case, there's also a bit of a PR benefit, obviously because of the very limited problems that they had with blood clots of people of a certain age. But Moderna, which alongside Pfizer and AstraZeneca is the other main one on offer in Australia, has changed the name of, and I didn't realise this till you told me this week, Sean, that it's changed the name of its COVID vax to Spikevax. What a terrible name for a vaccine. Can you imagine just saying it to the kids, say, come on kids, we're going to go get your Spikevax. There is no way in the world that you are going to get the kids in the car to go and get their Spikevax. There's images of I don't know, barbed wire and
dental extraction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They should. You know what they should have done? They should have named it like Cloudvax or Kittenvax or I don't know, Sugarvax or something. Yeah, something that kids and people actually like. Spikevax needs to go back to the marketing department.
Okay. Why is the Russian vaccination called Sputnik?
They've clearly run out of names for Russian inventions.
Oh, but Sputnik was like this 1970s space transporter.
Absolutely, that's what I mean. That they've.
Well, they're still hailing it as a success, right? They're still clinging to it.
I still love the fact that they rushed through the testing, and Vladimir Putin said it's okay. My daughter has participated in the experiment. Like, what on earth did she do wrong? Yeah. Bad Christmas present or something.
Well, look, I think it's been a very big week all around. The only other thing I was going to mention is China's leadership. The Chinese Communist Party held a 4-day gathering this week. There's about 200 party chiefs in Beijing. 200 party chiefs. There's only one party chief, and that's Xi Jinping. Now, he's been in power for, I think it's 9 years now. He's going to get a third 5-year term, which will take him to 15 years. That puts him up there with people like Mao Zedong, who's the founder of modern China. I mean, his predecessor is Deng Xiaoping. I think that's incredible that he has rewritten the rules. When Paul Keating was asked about this during the week at the National Press Club, he said, well, saves you having to get re-elected is when you change the rules. And I think that's right. What I think was particularly interesting this week was a couple of announcements that Xi Jinping and President Joe Biden will meet in a virtual summit next week. The fact that China and the US agreed to work together to fight against climate change at COP26. That's all about emissions reductions, technology and decarbonisation. It just seems to be a little bit of thawing of relations, and the fact that Xi Jinping is now in for at least another 5 years and by far the dominant player, probably globally, but certainly in the Asia, Indo-Pacific region. Whether it's the US has sort of come back down a bit, and it's just good to see those two superpowers talking again.
Incredible week, really. And if you consider America under Trump had exited commitment to the Paris Agreement, Biden has brought them right back into it, and China has come to the table. Apparently this has been in haggles for months, like 3 months worth of work to get them to this point. So, pretty easy to see that without China and America involved in this, it's not going to happen. We're not going to be able to restrain carbon emissions and the impact that has on the temperature of the globe. So brilliant. that it's actually happened. And just to me, so curious. You got this Chinese Leadership Forum, a 4-day lock-in, you might call it, of 200 Communist Party chiefs, all just saying, yep, we're right to support you. Xi Jinping, you stick around for another 5 years, please. What a remarkable process. And at the same time, hands across the ocean to the US. It's like, okay, just fascinating development.
Yeah, definitely.
What interests me is as there does appear to be a bit of a thawing between the US and China, where does that leave us, basically? And I know that, Sean, you've made the point previously that everyone was having a fight with China, that it wasn't just Australia, that there are a lot of little spats happening all over the place. But after the last kind of few weeks, does it make you wonder, are we kind of going to be left out on our own a little bit diplomatically? And have we got the skills to build some bridges and kind of mend those relationships in the same way that the US seems to be doing at the moment, whereas we don't hear anything from the current government about trying to mend those relationships with Beijing?
Are you doubting Scott Morrison's diplomatic skills?
I'm
Michael?
not doubting anybody's diplomatic skills.
Ask France. Ask China. It's a very serious point, though, because I don't think we'll be left in the cold. I think if the US and China get closer, that will be better for Australia. But you're right. I mean, China is picking on lots of countries, but it's kind of particularly picking, Australia looks like the weakling in the schoolyard at the moment because we are being particularly picked on. So it's a very fair point.
It's a very serious way to finish up, though, today, isn't it?
It is. I think we might leave it there. I tell you what I think's been a highlight of this show today, Michael. Adam's voice.
It has, hasn't it? And I hope Angie is happy. And if we have a spike in downloads of Angie listening on repeat to the Sunday episode and muting me talking and muting you and just listening to Adam, goodness me.
The funny thing is I've never thought about that until Angie's message.
Please don't.
And you actually do have a really good radio voice, Adam.
I'm living in hope that all of this section is edited out.
I don't think it will be. I think it's highly unlikely that it will be.
It's in. Michael, I think this is probably a pretty good place to leave it. Would you agree?
I think it's as good a place as any, Sean.
That's it for this morning. Thank you very much for listening to Fear and Greed, the Sunday edition. Michael, thank you for being part of it.
Thank you, Sean.
Adam.
Thank you very much, Sean.
Thanks just for talking, Adam. It's Sunday, the 14th of November, 2021. I'm Sean Aylmer, and we hope you enjoyed the show. Have a great Sunday.